more depth the status of women in Scotland, with a specific focus on intersectionality, on how different forms of inequalities overlap and interact with each other. And for that topic, it is especially important that you engage as widely as possible. That means hearing from different groups of people whose voice too often is completely unheard and not listened to. Louise raised this issue with me earlier this month, and at her suggestion, I have invited Dr. Emma Jackson of Glasgow Caledonian University, who's here today, to join the Council and to serve as co-chair in the year ahead. And I'm absolutely delighted that Dr. Jackson has accepted that invitation, and I think is a fantastic addition. Dr. Jackson brings to the Council valuable expertise and perspective on intersectionality, and has significant experience engaging with marginalised groups. So I know this has already contributed to the work of the Council, and she will now help to ensure that going forward that work is informed by an even wider section of women and girls. There is significant progress that we still need to make, because notwithstanding these victories, it is very clear today that gender equality in many respects is still a cause that is unwon. And I would go further than that and echo the comment that Louise made, because it's not just that there are areas where we haven't yet made significant progress. We live in a world today where it feels very often, sometimes on a day-to-day basis, that we face a regression, that we face a real backlash against some of the progress that has been made. Not just in gender equality, but when we look at issues of race and migration, there is now a need not just to make further progress, but to very deliberately protect the progress we've already made, not to allow it to be pushed backwards. I often say that whatever challenges I faced and my generation of women faced growing up, and they were many, some of these challenges still exist today. There are challenges that are faced by the current generation of young women that I and my generation didn't face. The sexism and misogyny that is so prevalent in our society today and finds so many more direct ways through social media of impacting on young women is something that I didn't experience growing up, and it is just one example of the ways in which we cannot rest on our laurels. We must push forward, but we must also be vigilant about the efforts of those who want to push us backwards instead. Demonstrate this in not just what I say as First Minister, but also in what I do, that advancing the cause of gender equality should be a central driving priority for any country, not just because it's the right thing for women and for girls, but it's the right thing for everybody. Countries, indeed companies and organisations, are stronger and better if they fully harness and utilise the talents and the skills and the abilities of women just as they do with men. So as First Minister, I want to make sure that Scotland leads the way, and that in leading the way we also play our part in encouraging and pushing forward progress elsewhere across the world. I want the generations of women and girls that come after me to grow up with equal opportunities in a truly equal society, and not to have to fight the same battles that my generation and the generations before mine have had to fight repeatedly. So that's why the Scottish Government is taking significant action. We're taking action across a range of issues to support women in work, to tackle violence against women, to tackle and break down gender stereotypes. And it's that ambition that also led me to establish the Advisory Council on Women and Girls, because I want to continually be challenged on this front, to know what more we can and must do as a government and as a society to tackle these persistent inequalities that we know still exist. Tangible action that came from a very important recommendation that you made. You also recommended the incorporation into Scots law of the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. Again, we accepted the vision behind that, and since October, the National Task Force on Human Rights Leadership has been exploring how we take that recommendation forward in practice. He also suggested the setting up of a new commission to advance equality in education, and next month we will see the very first meeting of the new task force on gender equality in education and learning. That will be co-chaired by Rosanna Hussain, a Young Scot ambassador, and the Deputy First Minister, John Swinney. Chair of the Scottish Government, Leslie Evans, commissioned an internal review, and I'm able to say today that we are going to do exactly that and create a new Directorate of Human Rights, Equality and Inclusion to make sure that these issues that you are putting very firmly on the agenda are right at the heart of everything we do in the Scottish Government and how we do it. So, that will very firmly and directly raise the status of the Government's equalities work, and it will send a signal not just internally within the Scottish Government, although it will very definitely do that, but it will also send a signal externally of the importance and the status that we attach to this work. Today, I started off by talking about the Beijing Declaration. Those documents, of course, emerged from the Women of the World conference. And one of the keynote speakers at that conference was Hillary Clinton, who at the time was First Lady of the United States. And her speech to the delegates was a very memorable one. It is one that is still remembered very well today. She summed up the importance of what was taking place by saying, "It's time for us to say here in Beijing and for the world to hear that it is no longer acceptable to discuss women's rights as separate from human rights. If there is one message that echoes from this conference, let it be that human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights once and for all." 25 years on, I don't think that message has become any less relevant or any less important. In fact, I think it is more relevant and more important even today than it was back then. Women's issues are not a narrow side issue. They're not something that we only think about in terms of the rights of a minority or that we consider after the fact when we're making policy. They are of fundamental importance, obviously of fundamental importance to women and to girls, but of fundamental importance to the kind of country and society that we are. As long as women and girls do not have the equality that we deserve, as long as there are fewer opportunities or barriers, as long as women and girls face sexism and misogyny and don't get to fulfil their full potential in the same way as male counterparts, then not only do we do a disservice to women, but we hold back society as a whole. That's why all of you at the Council, the Circle, people across the country continue to challenge the Scottish Government to make this a priority, because by promoting gender equality here in Scotland, we make this country a better place, a fairer place, and we will make it a more prosperous place and a better place to live. But we can also use our experience to drive the issue of gender equality globally as well. Stick at it. If we bring the passion and the commitment and the focus that this work needs, then here in Scotland, I believe we can create that fair, truly equal society that all of us want to see, and every woman and girl now and in the future deserves.